everyone and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be doing my July wrap up for all the books that I read for July. I have all my read books for 2022 here. I've kind of gone in and out of slumps this year, but I actually did really good for July and I thought I'd share it all with you. So I read 7 adult books in July. And I think I also read 2 children's books because I'm currently reading books out loud to my boys at night. I don't do it every night because sometimes I'm just too tired. But I am currently reading books. So I'm not going to include the children's books in these videos. I don't think that we really need to know. So I have them in order that I have read them. So actually, we're going to talk about these 2 first because we have 2 books for an online book club that we pick every month, and I normally just pick one of the 2 that I want to read. But this month I read both of them because I just wasn't feeling anything else that I had on my TBR, and I'll talk about that a little bit as well. But I read both The Overnight Guest by Heather Gundercuff and The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. And I enjoyed both of these. These were both 4-star books for me. The Overnight Guest literally had me on the edge of my seat. This was one of the favourite books that I have read so far this year. It was just really creepy and yeah, it just kept me right on the edge of my seat. And The Paris Apartment, which I actually just finished yesterday, I believe it was. This is an unpopular opinion, I think, but I actually really enjoyed it. This is the first book from Lucy Foley I have read, and maybe if I was to read her other books, I might have a different opinion. But I actually really liked this. I loved all the different perspectives and points of view, and going over the same information, but from the different perspectives. And that's what I really liked about Dracula as well. Was that it was all written in different letters and journal entries, and a lot of people say it's repetitive, but I actually really like that because it really does give you an insight to that person, what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and giving you small hints as to why they might be hiding something. So I actually thoroughly enjoyed both of these books. Highly recommend The Overnight Guest though. So good. So those were those, and then those were those. Good English, Rebecca. Sorry. I've just set up a street library this week in my street, and one of my neighbours is out there and I can kind of see it through the window. So I'm going to try not to be snoopy. Another book, well, short story. It's only 15 pages long, but I read The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, and this is pretty much just a short article or a short story that was written about her experience with postnatal depression, postnatal psychosis, postnatal anxiety. Take your pick, they can kind of all blend in together. It kind of does go on the more side of postnatal psychosis, and this is really creepy. Like, I've been thinking about this for weeks, and I personally also experienced quite bad postnatal anxiety and postnatal depression, so I can 100% see how someone who was treated in the way that they were treated back in the late 1800s can literally be driven to madness, and how the psychosis can really take over just from confinement and boredom and being forced to rest but not being able to let your mind be active. I had to constantly feel my mind being active because otherwise I personally really struggled with being with my children, and we were in lockdown as well, so being with my children in lockdown, I mean, I could not imagine being told to bed rest for months on end as part of that, because your brain will literally just eat you from the inside out. And that is pretty much what this short story is about. It did actually change the way that certain things were dealt with in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and that they really looked into how the bed rest kind of treatment was not the best and not the healthiest for these people that really had to deal with it in other ways. Be out and about, be active. So can highly recommend that, although the last couple of pages gets a bit creepy. Sorry, I had that one in the wrong spot. Another book I read was DKMH by Dacre Montgomery, and this is a collection of poems from a young Australian actor. The introduction to this book was fantastic. It was probably one of the best introductions I have ever read. It was so relatable, so enticing, and I had really high hopes for the poetry. Once I got to the poetry though, it just didn't grab me. Some of it did, some of it just didn't make sense to me. And I really do wish that a lot of the book was written how he'd written the introduction, because the introduction was top notch. And then there's also a playlist in there which is really quite fun to listen to as well. The whole concept of the book was good, but not for me. Now, we've gone to another book, and this was written in 1937, and this is a crime classic. It is a murder mystery type. We know who the murderer is. However, it's all about him trying to prove his guilt. And it doesn't matter it was written in 1937. Honestly, this story could take place at any time. Obviously, the language is older English language because it is from pre-World War II era. But I was laughing out loud. The whole story is ridiculous, and I thoroughly enjoyed this. 6 out of 5 stars. One of my favorite books. I will be keeping this copy. I found it by accident when I was looking for Agatha Christie, and when I picked it up at the time, I did not know that the author, Anthony Berkeley, actually founded the detective club with Agatha Christie, and he is also from the golden age of mystery crime novelists, and I had no idea. So I really kind of, now that I've known that, because after I'd finished reading it, I really did do some research because I wanted to find some more of his works, because this was just so good. And I learned all of that, and it was kind of funny because I went into the bookshop looking for Agatha Christie, and I walked out with this, which is one of her friends, and it was by far one of the best books I've read ever, really. It's just someone trying to prove that he murdered someone, and it is flippin' hilarious. And the last book that I read was kind of like graphic novel, collection of art, but it's also a memoir, and it's called What the F Is This by Celeste Mountjoy. And she's an artist, a very young artist here in Australia, but this book pretty much just goes through her struggles with grief, her struggles with dealing with trauma, coming of age, becoming a woman, navigating certain aspects of all of that together, being young, having trauma, grief, and all of that as well. And it really is quite enlightening. I didn't actually relate to a lot of it because I haven't been through a lot of things that she went through. She seemed like quite an outgoing, bubbly, confident person. I'm definitely not. A lot of things that she described when she was a teenager, I would not have even dreamt of doing those things. So I found it hard to relate in that aspect, is that I suppose we're from very two different backgrounds maybe, and we grew up in different ways, and she had access to things that I didn't, and maybe just different groups of people as well. And growing up in a big city, it would be a different culture to where I grew up in a smaller city on acreage. So I did enjoy it. I think the artwork was really fun. It's kind of just this really, it's all like red, blue, white, black, and yellow. And yeah, it's actually a really sad story about how she's really had to learn how to deal with it all, and how to learn to deal with the grief. And I did actually tab a couple of things that did relate to me. This one here is, I'm either pissed or miserable. And the more miserable I am, the more pissed I want to get. The more pissed I get, the more miserable I become. And I'm the kind of person that when I get upset, I get angry. But when I get angry, I get upset. And that related to me because I feel like I'm constantly in this vicious cycle of never-ending confusion, really, about what emotion I'm actually feeling. Am I angry? Am I sad? Am I both? I have no idea. But in her introduction as well, she'd also written, we're shown so much understanding and compassion as children when we cry and freak out in public. And yet, as adults, we're told vulnerability is a weakness. And that just really stuck to me as well, because I'm a very emotional person. However, I don't deal with other people's emotions very well, including my poor boys. And it just really stuck me, because you've really got to understand, I suppose, the other perspective and understand what that person is feeling, and that grief and emotions are a normal part of life, and it doesn't matter what age you are, you should be able to get whatever you need to off your chest at the time that your body really needs to do it. If you try to hold it in, it's going to make you sick, and it's going to make you fret, and it's going to make you grieve harder, and it's going to make you feel hard to breathe and cause a whole pile of other internal issues as well. So this was interesting. I wouldn't recommend it for everyone because, like I said, I didn't really relate to a lot of it. But if you are someone that had issues with grief and trauma at a young age, I think that you would find this very comforting, because someone else has been through it and has put it down on paper. Anyways, these are the books that I read for July. I'm quite proud of myself. This is quite a big stack for what I would normally achieve. But I was feeling really, really good, and I'm really getting into thrillers at the moment. So I think I will stay on that path, and we'll see where August takes us. Thank you so much for watching. If you've read any of these books and you liked them, please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you thought about them and why, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.